everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. I'm here with by far, I would like to say, one of my coolest guests, but then again, Brian Bishop will kick me in the teeth if I do, but I'm going to say it. It's Travis Pastrana. Oh my God, I'm really excited to have you. I've followed you since I've been a child, since we've been a child, because you're not far off me, my friend. And I've gotten to know you through distance, like so many of your fans and so many of the people that have been around you. But welcome to the show. Thank you so much for making the time. I know you are slammed.
No, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. Maryland weather, I tell you, we just had a bunch of rain. So we had a production crew. They always build on those extra days. You're like, we won't need that. And then on the last day, you're pinned wide open. But it is an honor to be on the show. And I really appreciate you having me.
Thank you. You're kind of way out on the East Coast, and I know you get the similar weather actually to what we get in BC. I know it's pouring rain today, but we're not filming, so I cannot complain. What are you guys filming today? Nitro Circus stuff?
Always filming something. Yeah, Nitro Circus out here. More of just ramp building day, kind of getting everyone out here, just figuring out what's going on. But we kind of had everything pushed back. Been doing a lot of racing here recently, power boats last weekend, but then we had a rally test in between that and another rally the weekend before. So been fun trying to get Nitro Rallycross off the ground, which is like basically motocross with a roll cage. And so right now today we're filming both for Can-Am and BRP, but also doing some Nitro Circus, and have this young little 11-year-old girl who's launching 360s over huge gaps. And her little brother Steele her little brother is 7 years old, and he's flying everything, but all he wants to do is ride the dirt bike. So he's just in the mud out there, just crashing everywhere. It's been fun.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. You guys foster such a creative, unique, and outgoing community when you see the people that you hang around. I know, I just want to start off, like, for the people who haven't, and I don't know if there's anybody on the planet that doesn't know who you are, but if you don't, I'm going to rattle off a little bit, correct anything that I'm wrong, because I've done the best I can. But I am telling you, you have a list of literally accomplishments that is longer than the length of my office. And so you've got 17 X Games medals. 11 of those are gold, right? Tell me I'm right. That's on correct. That. Okay. You freestyle, you race, multiple disciplinary, like you switch from one to other, like it's absolutely nothing. You're literally the 20th century sports icon. I like to think you're our time's Evel Knievel on steroids. So that's huge. You have video games based on you. You're a 3-time champion in the motocross disciplinary, whether it's supercross or outdoor, right? Am I wrong on that?
So, I won one Supercross championship in 2001. So getting older,
yep.
Won outdoor in 2000, won the Motocross of Nations for the U.S. In 2000 as well. And then mostly the injuries moved to four wheels after that.
Yeah, I know. I remember watching the first time that you did the first time you did a double backflip. Yeah, I remember watching that. Oh my God. I remember watching all the things you've done, because that's what we do when you have somebody like you. And then you kind of jumped into like flat track. I watched a flat track video recently of you that looked like your knee was going to go sideways. I don't know how you do that. That's makes my knees ache just watching those videos. So, and I think most importantly, you're a really, really supportive, badass husband and father to two really gnarly little girls. And I got to witness you take your girls to school in a rally car. Was that a rally car? What did you take them to school in?
Could have been. Yeah, no, I drive they call it the race car, but yeah, no, it's just a Subaru STI. But now we have fun. When we say donuts, we're not talking about Dunkin'. We're talking about spinning in circles. So it's funny when you take some of their classmates back to, they call it Pastrana land, and just to see my little girl, 7 years old. And, we have the restrictor plate on her 1,000cc Can-Am set at 48 miles an hour, because that won't over jump the biggest jump that we have on her track. So at 7 years old, she jumps over, like, my wife, Lyn-z, who's also a 2-time world champion and multi-time X Games gold medalist. But Lyn-z, she was driving the car underneath my 7-year-old, jumping over top of her on a big double. So it's normal-ish family.
I would like to think it's normal. I'd like to think I would like to see more normal behavior like that. I think we would be all in a better society if we did. It's interesting to watch those little girls too, because you've got a group of people around your family that kind of acts as surrogate parents. You've got Jelaine, and then you've got all these other, you got Wheels, you got all these guys around you. And it's like, these girls are being raised in such an environment that they're going to grow up to be such powerhouse individual women. And I know in our day society, I don't think that maybe I'm putting words in your mouth. Maybe I don't think that you worry about your girls growing up in this society because of who they are and how powerful they already are as little humans and just badasses as in a tiny package. But I mean, for most girls growing up in society, you know, they're going to have to deal with issues that your little girls aren't, because I feel like nobody would mess with those children.
Well, everyone says, I can't believe, like, my wife, she was skating on tour a month after having our first child, and we're traveling Europe with a 1 month old. And that continued, and tour life is very, it's very carny, very circus. But everyone says, how could you do that? And for Lyn-z and for myself, it's been so cool seeing them grow up with, yeah, I mean, they're crazy. They're, whatever you want to call most of the guys that are guys and girls in the Nitro Circus, but they're a family and they're so passionate. And if they could have half the passion, I don't care what they do, but if they have the passion that my wife has for skating, or I have for dirt bikes and cars, or Aaron Wheels Fotheringham has for wheelchair motocross, like, it doesn't matter what these guys have, what kind of injuries they have, what kind of, a lot of the guys are OCD or ADHD, or they were labeled with these things that say you can't be as good as everyone else. But really, it just means that you can be extraordinary in other ways. And I feel like the hardest part is my girls, they're so used to believing that anything is possible, and they have so much confidence and they're so outgoing. You got to kind of bring it back a little bit and be like, okay, like, rules are there for a reason. Like, we have to understand, before you can break any rules, you have to understand all the rules and why they're there. I know that doesn't probably make sense to anyone that's listening to this, but that's my biggest thing. You always have to have respect, and you have to know the rules, and you have to work at what you do if you want to make it work. But I feel like right now is the best time to be a female growing up. I mean, you've had people that have proved it. You've had Danica Patrick racing for the win at the Indy 500, which is the biggest motorsport on earth. Like, biggest single day motorsport. They have 800,000 people that go there. I mean, this is, there's been girls in the top 8 right now. You have Brian Deegan's daughter, Haley, who's
she's killing it.
She's crushing it in NASCAR. And, she's getting into a tough time to come in because they don't get the practice. And, the rookies are definitely struggling a little bit, not having, with COVID and everything kind of shut down. But she's still doing extraordinary. You have so many, and just powerful. I mean, their mom, she won the world championship in 2019. Like, 2 years ago, she's still one of the world's best skateboarders. And just to know that, I know we'll still be the parents that are, you don't know anything in a couple of years, but right now with a 6 and a 7-year-old, I feel like it's just awesome being able to travel the world and show them the experiences, and that it doesn't matter if someone, don't judge a book by its cover. We have guys that are tattooed, ear piercings, face tattoos, that are the sweetest, nicest human beings on the face of the earth. And then we have some Mormons that are with, they wouldn't swear. They don't even, don't not even think about drinking a beer or anything like that. So it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. If you're passionate about what you do, you can make it.
It's just, you're such an inspiration to a lot of these people too, I think. And I know you are, you've been humble from the very beginning, but I think you kind of overstate your, what's the word I'm looking for here? You inspire people in such a way that it allows them to be themselves, but not only be themselves, it allows them to push them to be even greater. And I think that you overlook really why they do that. And I think a lot of that comes from you yourself, Travis. From a very young age, you've shown that drive, that ability to do things that no other human being could do on whether it's 2 wheels, 4 wheels, a tricycle, to anything else. Like, you really don't have a limit with you. And I think it gives this permission, almost this type of permission to these individuals without even having to say it, that just go as hard as you want, go be as crazy as you want to be, go be as gnarly as you want to be, outgoing as you want to be, as quiet and private as you want to be, but you can still be all of those things within this family, and there's no judgments. And I think that's fostering such a unique side to your children. And I love that you're willing to talk about them, because there's so much value in that. And especially when my listeners, you know, a lot of them, well, I think the majority of them, I would like to think, are parents, because if somebody's younger listening to this, they shouldn't. But the some of these guys I've had on, I'm telling you, you know what it's like to hang out with you have some special operation friends. And so some of the things that slip out of your mouth, you just try to just move on from. So these, you know, this environment you create, I think it's important to talk about, because the creative uniqueness to the way you raise your kids shows a perspective. Who's that? Lyn-z.
Hello.
Hello. You don't know me, but I know you and Jolene. I used to race with Jolene. Hi, everyone. I hear you're just out there murdering it with your daughter again, like usual.
Yeah, I'm very helmet sweaty right now. It's hot out there.
Helmet sweaty is the way we like you.
Sorry, she doesn't like being put on the spot too much. I didn't tell her what we were doing up here, so she's like, "Wait, what's going on?"
It's okay. She'll snacks are not overrated. You may get all the snacks you want, my dear. Anyway, what I was getting at was, I think it's important to acknowledge the way you raise your children, because a lot of our listeners, like I was stating, are parents, and they, you know, everybody right now, especially with COVID, is struggling with one thing or another, whether it's homeschooling or things like that. And you guys come at it from a different perspective, where you make the life you live, that would want to call it a traveling circus chaos that you picture, you make that an education in itself. And I think that goes to show other parents that you can look outside the box and have a different way of thinking with their kids. And that's important to me. I have a 5-year-old, almost 5-year-old, and he's a menace. And so I look at the way that you guys raise your kids, and that outdoor and that family uniqueness, and that just exposing them to different cultures and different people. And so that's why I'm glad to see that you're open and talking about that. It's important. I want to switch gears a little bit to you in terms of your you and your family's dynamic and with your mental health, and how that all conspires. Because for us here, we talk a lot about mental health with athletes, and we talk about them with people with traumatic brain injury and concussion syndrome and things like that. And I know you yourself have had a few knocks to the head, just a few.
Couple.
A couple. Have you had any sort of effects come up from that, from just concussions and just racking yourself a lot?
Yeah, well, concussions are probably, when I was growing up, was the most underrated injury, because you're like, well, I'm not broken, so I can obviously get back out there. And you know, recently, obviously, the documentary is coming out in the NFL, and you're starting to see a lot more traumatic brain injury stuff from a lot of the military. And being, you know, East Coast Maryland, you know, my dad was in Vietnam, and just having a lot of friends that went into the SEALs and different, or you know, special forces of whatever type. It's really interesting to see how much more we understand about it, but still how much we really don't. One of the interesting parts was I had the opportunity through Boot Campaign, who they helped a lot of the vets when they come back over, and they opened up kind of their facility to the Nitro Circus, just to send a couple of the guys, myself included, who had the most brain injuries, and just educated us on brain injuries and kind of that mental health side. And the hardest part for us is that when you're an athlete, or when, you know, your job is to be out there and you work so hard, for instance, to go to the World Championships or the Nitro World Games or whatever it is, and you hit your head and you're still like, you know, you're not okay, but you're telling the doctor, I'm fine, I'm great, I wasn't knocked out, I was good. And it's hard, because we know, we see these guys, you know, they want to be out there, but you also know if they have another hit to the head in the same area, you know, the doctors basically said, if you have 2 major traumas to the exact same part, you know, that's pretty much going to be 100% brain damage in that area if you don't let your brain recover. Now, what was interesting was that I also learned there's guys like Blake Bilko Williams, X Games gold medalist, freestyler. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could hit him over the head with a baseball bat. He could be knocked out for 15 minutes. He'd wake up, no symptoms, no anything, 100%. And genetically, there's just some people that are stronger than other people. But if you've made it in a contact sport to an elite level, chances are you're predispositioned, you're hard-headed. We're all kind of hard-headed, if you will. And you've been able to recover. But one of the big things was looking at airbags now. They save your body, but you're able to re-hit the same area over and over again. The doctor said the greatest thing, about motocross is that when you usually hit hard enough when you knock yourself out that you're broken, and you naturally take the time to recover, as opposed to boxing, and people turn the same direction, they get hit relatively the same spots. Same thing. You have that side you fall to, or if you're in football, you always hit over and over and over again. It's usually that same area. So they said CTE, the biggest sport per capita or whatever was women's soccer. And they said not headbutts, it's hitting the soccer ball, even though it's not a concussion. When the kids are young and they're learning that and they hit the same spot over and over again. Not sexist, not male, female, but generally speaking, they're usually guys are a little less susceptible than women to have CTE from just statistics. And then there's also some girls that are stronger than any guys out there. So it's a really interesting thing where you have to know your body. But the first time you have a concussion, the second time, the third time, unfortunately, you don't know these symptoms. And that's why all these, rules are basically put in place. But if you're not 100%, even if the doctor says, okay, you're good, it's been 3 months since your concussion, but you're still tired. You still, when you stand up, you get lightheaded. You're angry all the time. You're sad all the time. You're crying for no apparent reason. That's when I know I hit my head. And you can't go, I'll be watching Lassie and, I'm just tearing up and I'm like, I never cry. What's going on? And you got guys like TJ Lavin, who just got angry. He was angry for a year. And I'm like, this is the nicest guy in the world. Some other guys, one of the guys snapped at his mom. He yelled at his mom and then he started crying and he went from angry to sad. And you're like, okay, did you hit your head recently? He's like, yeah, I had a bad concussion a month ago. I'm like, all right. And you gotta, the hard part is for the family to understand that as well, because you're going through these mood swings that, especially as a tough guy, you're like, why is my buddy over in the corner crying by himself? And that's
holding himself. Yeah.
It's something that guys generally don't admit doing. And they'll just, I don't know, I got something in my eye. And you walk out the room. But emotionally, when you hit your head, your body's, its defense system to shut you down is basically, and you're depleted in testosterone. It actually shuts your body down. Like my uncle was quarterback for Denver Broncos, had a lot of concussions. And he goes out and he was so emotional. He hugged everyone. They're like, no, this guy was, he was Golden Glove boxer. He was undefeated in wrestling. He was All-American lacrosse, football, toughest guy ever, and have enough knocks. And it's just your body's natural instinct is to shut down. And there's a lot of stuff that you can do. Don't be afraid to go to the doctors. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And, to get on just vitamins that actually, help you get there. And for me, the biggest thing with injuries is sleeping. I can't, you can't go to sleep. And that's not necessarily from the head injuries as much as from, you've got something in your back and you go to sleep and you're asleep for 20 minutes and you wake up and you just have shooting pains down your legs. So you get up and you walk and you stretch and eventually you're just not even there. So you start taking pain medicine and then that makes your head worse. And then sleeping pills or whatever. So that's what CBD has been huge for me, and just not necessarily reducing the pain, but reducing inflammation enough that I can sleep through the night. So, don't be afraid to ask for help, I think is the biggest thing doesn't matter how tough you are. If your body has been hit and it's not recovering, there's a lot of things they can do to help you. Sorry for that really long rant, but yes.
Oh God, no, my people love rants. They're so used to it with me. Don't worry. This is normal behavior here. Welcome to the club. I was really excited there. I think one of the things I find most fascinating about what you just said there was you brought in a lot of different aspects that people can do that are, nothing that it's going to cost them a bunch of money. It's look after your body, sleep, take the rest and recovery, do those things. But then there's something that you just said that I don't know if I never thought you would do this, but CBD. So you're running into that space now, which is quite nice to see. I'm glad to see athletes finally taking advantage of that healing property.
I was East Coast. I mean, it's weird because you go West Coast and you kind of got, my wife, she's like, oh, your family drinks. That's like super horrible for you. And then her family like smokes. And you're like, wait, no, that's
Right.
like, so it's just, I'm not, like kind of the opposite. Lyn-z doesn't or anything, but like, it's just interesting what is okay in different societies, different
Right.
cultures, how you raised. But for my family, I like anything CBD or smoking anything was that way. You were like the Antichrist, like you would be
right.
completely thrown out of the family. But they'd be fine to pick up a beer after the end of the day, so that's neither healthy, for sure. Well, not neither healthy, but what's interesting is with the CBD, I had to start trying other stuff because I was taking Advil from the time I was 14 years old, for anti-inflammatory. My knees, I actually had where the doctor gave me a bunch of syringes to go, and I would drain my knee so it would be like literally stick, huge syringe with like you're just draining blood out. Yeah, like, but I mean, like, like every day I drain my knee so I could bend it far enough to get the foot peg. This is when I was trying to race Supercross, and I would ride for about an hour to an hour and a half, and then the knee would swell up so much that I couldn't bend it far enough to ride properly. So that would be when my day would end. And I did that for about a year, and I was just 6 Advil in the morning, 6 Advil at lunch, 6 Advil at dinner, or ibuprofen. And I'm nothing against Advil, and if you need it, you need it. But my stomach, I basically developed an ulcer, and they were like, had a lot of stomach issues, and they said, okay, you can't take ibuprofen anymore. You can't do anything that you would normally do to get rid of this swelling. And to be able to, for me, it was my back. I dislocated my SI joints, which is, everyone complains about sciatic pain. So my sciatic is fused. So when I sit down for too long, like on an airplane or something, my whole leg goes numb, burning sensation, like it's miserable. Sleeping is about impossible. So when I stopped the Advil, I'm like, I can't physically sleep. And I was at wit's ends and I'm like, okay, I'm open. What's available? What can I take that's going to help this? And I found that anything that anti-inflammatory, anything that Advil or ibuprofen helped, CBD helped equally or better. And this is something that's not bad for your liver. It's not bad for your stomach. It's something that's very natural. And for me, I wanted to break kind of that stereotype that I was always brought up with. I don't know if it's just East Coast or just how I was brought up military. But
I was East Coast as well, so don't worry, I get it. But you did have a Vietnam vet father, so that's a completely different ballgame conversation.
Just be tougher. I'm like, I can't sleep.
Stop your crying and do it. What is wrong with you? It's like,
go to sleep now. But so that was interesting. And then my dad, refused to ever take painkillers, refused to take anything really. And he got to where he couldn't sleep. And he had 3 back surgeries in about 6 months. And I mean, this is personal. I don't like to talk too much, but just as this is a mental health podcast, the tough Marine, this doesn't make sense for people that don't know my dad or like know the Marine mentality, but put his hand on my shoulder and I went to visit him and he goes, hey, I'm going to get one more operation. I said, if that doesn't help, I'll give it a month. He said, I can't live in this fog of painkillers. I'm not me. It's not who I am. He goes, I love you. I love life. I love everything. He goes, I can't live like this. So if I end up like my brother is, my uncle Richard took his life just after pain, great life, but he retired. And that next month he was like, well, my job's done. Kids are grown and couldn't deal with the pain. So when my dad was in that situation, I finally talked him into trying some CBD and just even melatonin. Like he's like, I'm not taking anything. I'm like, you're fine. This won't change you. It's not Vicodin. You're not going to get hooked on it.
It's not going to hurt you.
Yeah. And about a week in, he started getting a little more sleep. And he wasn't sleeping. He's still probably 6 hours a night. He's still in pain, but it allowed him to get enough sleep to be able to mentally be strong enough to go to physical therapy, mentally be strong enough to do his job, to continue working, to continue being an asset. He's still construction. That's what my uncles, that's what they do. And for him, to be able to keep going to work, that's a big part of his mental health, is to be able to contribute. That's what his brother, as soon as he didn't feel like he was contributing, his job here was done. And for me, if I know it's just not me, it's just not my dad. I know that we're probably the extreme end of this if we're being injured, more than most, but you see people that just sit down a lot. It's people that have never had an injury that still have back issues or sleep issues, anxiety issues. And, this is all stuff that I believe on a small scale can help. It's not, people are like, oh, well, it's not a psychedelic. It doesn't, I don't feel like I do when I take them. Like, no, you're not supposed to. This is to help people that want to get better, be able to sleep a little bit more, to be able to get back to physical therapy, to be able to get back and do your job a little bit better. And if you're trying to be on top of your sport, obviously in sports, it's huge. But, to all the people that are like, oh, well, I don't need it. I sleep fine and I don't have injuries and I'm not trying to be that extra 5%, 10% better. Great. I'm happy for you. But for most of my friends that are getting out of action sports at, 30 years old and they got the rest of their life thinking about, oh man, I got to get a real job now. And I'm either going to be sitting at a desk, and that in itself is anxiety, or, I'm going to be working construction, like my dad. And that's something that you got to be physical. And with knees and ankles that are like my knees and ankles and shoulders, it's not easy.
No, well, I'm just surprised. I mean, I'm glad. It's like the happiest surprise, because I don't know if it's an East Coast thing, and it might be because I know I was raised in Ontario, so it was we had a similar look at that. I remember my parents being like, if I see that near you, on you, close to you, you're dead.
Nope. Yeah,
it will beat your ass
with
the belt so bad. Yeah, there's no chance, no coming back from that. There's no coming back from that. And now I sit there in front of my mom and use it for my PTS and sit there, and she just smiles and laughs and thinks it's hilarious, because she's like, there's never a thought in my mind that I would go through life and see my 31-year-old daughter sitting there doing that in front of your father and I, and being proud because it means that you get to be with us, because it's healed you, it helps you, and you're present and you're not hurting and your body isn't on fire and you're not just uncomfortably moving or drugged out on opiates. So that's a fantastic thing to see, CBD in itself. You good?
Yes. Sorry, I got to sign something right here.
No.
Here, talk to Hubert real quick.
What's happening?
Hey, Hubert, what's going on, buddy?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm fantastic. It's nice to meet you.
So Hubert
takes podcast.
He's like, so what's going on? Say hi to I say hi to Brass and Unity podcast and everyone listening that will be listening.
Well, that sounds awesome.
Well,
we're just here running Pastrana land, making things happen.
I know the poor guy feels so bad. Yeah, good to meet you too, sweetheart.
Well, hey, sorry about that. We just had rain put us behind a little bit, so.
No, you really don't have to apologize. I prefer things like this. This is how I am. We don't edit, and we don't do anything like that. We put a beginning and a middle and an end, and then everybody enjoys it because it's honest, and that's the difference. So yeah, getting back to CBD. So how long have you been taking that?
So I started taking a little bit when, it's been 10 years now. I got a discectomy, not a vasectomy. I was trying to, basically they were like, we need to fuse through your vertebrae. I was like, I really don't want to be fused yet. Like, I'm already not very limber, I'm 25 or 25 at the time or whatever. And I was like, there's got to be a difference. So I tried a procedure that didn't really work. And I couldn't, this sounds silly, but I couldn't cuddle with my wife, because every probably 20 or 30 minutes I'd have to move and I'd have to get up. And she's like, look, we can't even sleep in the same bed. I mean, this was when we were dating and everything in the beginning and engaged. Right. And she's like, look, you got to figure this out. Like, you can't get up every hour to stretch. She's like, well, I mean, you can, but I need my sleep.
I'm not doing this.
Yeah. So that was honestly, she was like, look, Lyn-z was kind of the one that first was like, hey, you have to try something. She's like, you don't want to get fused? Great. I don't want you to be fused. I like you doing all the stuff you're doing. Like, let's just see if we can help get this under control without, because at that point I already had, kind of the ulcers and everything from the ibuprofen. Yeah. She's like, okay, so what can we do? and started researching CBD and different, at that point, it wasn't quite as many companies going and everything. And, I started taking it the first day. I'm like, it didn't do anything. She's like, give it like 2 or 3 days. And within a month, I'm like, I'm sleeping through the night. She goes, I told you. I said, oh, it's probably just timing. So I stopped taking it. About a week later, start sleeping less. Nothing's working. I'm like, man, my back's sore again. She's like, I told you. I was like, oh, it's a coincidence. I was roading more this week. The same as my dad. Yeah. My dad did the same thing. He's like, oh, well, yeah, I was sleeping better, but it was probably just time. I'm like, all right, stop taking it. He's like, oh, you wouldn't believe, but man, my back hurts again. I can't sleep. I'm like, did you stop taking CBD? Well, yeah, but I'm sure that didn't do it. You're like, all right, you can only do this cycle so many times before you're like, oh, there's something to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, this also comes with just the CBD alone. For me, it isn't enough. You have to then go and you have to take that and work on the physical therapy. You have to, for me, melatonin also helps because when you don't sleep, you get low in B vitamins. B vitamins produce melatonin. So you have less energy in the day and you have less ability for your body to actually sleep correctly at night. So the less you sleep, the more tired you get. The more tired you get, the less you sleep. It's this really vicious cycle. So until you get your body correct and go in and do some blood work and see where you're low. I was super low in testosterone. I talked to everybody else that was like in action sports, almost every single person in football and whatever, they're all low. And I'm like, these are the manliest dudes in the world. Like, what's going on?
Right.
But it's your body, you hit your head enough. It says, no, like we're not making any more testosterone. That's going to make you do stupid stuff and go hit your head again. So your body's protection mechanism actually kind of hurts you in the long run. It's like, swelling and anti-inflammatory. It's just telling you you've done too much, but at a certain point, you need to be able to use that. And when it starts pushing on the, that stops your joints from moving how you want, then you hurt other stuff, or it pushes on the nerves, and that makes your legs go numb. So all bad stuff.
Well, can we talk about why you almost had to have fused and what you did? That was the most ridiculous crash I think witnessed on television. Do you want to talk about why your back is so bad?
Which when I was,
I don't know, the one your tailbone went up inside of your spine
in some
weird, disgusting way. Oh.
So when I was my 15th birthday, I didn't go fast enough, landed short on a jump, and I had, for lack of a better term, I shattered my pelvis, but your spine is connected to your pelvis like this. So on both sides. So one side, the spine's here, and the other side, the spine's here. And all of those little bones shattered. So basically my spine unraped myself. It went out the other direction, basically. So they fused all that back together. But actually that wasn't the problem with the discs. That I was limited in range of motion, numbness down the legs, that kind of stuff. But actually crashed at X Games, was fine, landed on my butt, was able to ride the rest of that day, no big deal. But I had a couple compressed vertebrae, and that actually had some bulging discs. And all of a sudden, and you see bulging discs all the time. It's not like you could fall off your chair and get a bulge if you land wrong. It's not a big deal. That was the worst long-term injury I've ever had, because I always treated it like an injury and said, okay, I'll relax. Well, you can't. The less you do, the worse that gets. You need your muscles to actually pull everything back straight. You need to be strengthening that. You need to be working on it. You need to be on a stand-up paddleboard, which I didn't know about on the East Coast until I was out there. But you stand up paddleboard, and I'm like, man, 2 hours. Okay, most people can't do 2 hours a day, but when it's really bad, like if I'd go out, get up at 5 a.m. and I could go, Lyn-z would go surf, I'd go stand up paddleboard, looking like an idiot out there, and then the waves just, whatever, go swim for a half hour and go stand up paddleboard for an hour. And by 9 a.m., I am good for the day, and I'm going to sleep well that night, like literally. And that would last me 2 or 3 days, just literally having that motion, that side to side, and that strengthening of your core. So if I can go, like with my knees, if I can go on 2 20-mile bike rides a week, my knees, I don't have an ACL or PCL in either one, they're fine. And it's as little as that is. Your shoulders, my shoulder, the I had to labor them and everything, but need, full, anyway, long story long. But if I do my, you do your ins and outs, you do your ups and downs for rotator cuff every day. It's 5 minutes a day. Like, it'll take me 2 hours a day of physical activity, which I know it's a lot. But even if you have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get, your 5 minutes of that done, you don't have to do 2 hours a day, but it helps.
Your life. Why don't you want to? Like, why wouldn't you want to? Why wouldn't you rather? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it makes sense for the most part.
Like my dad said, he goes, I get up at 5 a.m. for work and I finish work at 8 p.m. So you want to find 2 hours of your day? He's like, I want to sit on the couch when I get back and have a beer. Right. I'm like, okay, I understand that. And that makes sense. But instead of sitting on the couch and having a beer, jump on your bicycle for 2 seconds and eat some CBD, or get on your little hand bike or whatever. You can still watch your show, whatever you're hooked to. You're watching,
whatever you're addicted to at the time.
So
no, but I feel like I mean it's easier to be active when you're active. So I mean from the energy level and what it does for your endorphins and keeping that momentum, but it's often getting that person from that point of where they're in that relaxed state to that active movement and keeping that and just building that habit long enough, that habit forming, that 21 days, getting somebody to do that, then often you can kind of keep them moving. It's getting them from that point to that little bit of activity and making it part of their routine. And somebody's got to want it. They got to want to feel better. They got to want to not have to take a handful of pills to feel better. They have to want to feel better naturally or on their own. I'm not for all natural things all of the time. Don't get me wrong. I just know CBD and cannabis, psilocybin and ayahuasca have been the reason for the past 10 years that I'm alive. And I know it's worked because I've tried the spectrum. I've tried the 10 pharmaceutical drugs that would have taken you down and you don't stop moving like on a tiny human. Like I've tried all of that and I know there's value in that, but I think there's also a lot of value in, like you said, the little things, like the little physical movements you're doing, the little stretching, the little, just do repetition. It takes 5 minutes, just do it. It'll help you the next day and it'll build and it'll progress. And so that's fantastic. I know that you and your dad and the way that you were raised is very particular because it's a Vietnam vet. And that's a whole different type of veteran. You're not talking about Iraq, Afghanistan, World War II. You're talking about Vietnam. That's a very hardened individual, more so I find than a lot of other people that I've met that are vets. So what was that like with a family dynamic with your dad having done what he had did and then coming home and having you, a higher energy child, we'll call that a good way to put it?
Yeah, that's good. Well, first of all, I mean, I just thanks out there to yourself, to all the vets, to everyone that served to help myself, all my friends be able to play for a living, to do what we love to do, and to live the American dream. I mean, I don't know if you can see the flags up there.
Not a lot of flags at all. There's not a lot of flags
up there at
all.
Those are all flags of close friends those were all flags that were over. Iraq, Afghanistan, anyway, long story long, definitely, I truly appreciate all those and, coming up on Memorial Day, definitely, those that have played the ultimate sacrifice, I thank you. And, definitely we've been able to learn a lot as well from those that have come from, Walter Reed and, just to see, you had a guy, Adam Keys, triple amputee. He's like, I want to jump into the airbag. I'm like, so we put him on a big wheel. I'm like, look, start halfway. He's like, we don't do anything halfway. 7 for 5. I was like, all right. We let him go from the top and he missed the airbag and he broke his hip. And I'm about crying in tears. Like, oh my gosh. He's like, couldn't kill me in the war. Can't kill me here. Pastrana land. And I'm like, just the mentality. I felt horrible. I'm like, I shouldn't have let him do that. And I'm like, I don't know. It just seemed like, but he didn't have legs. So when he hit the bottom, he lost control of the front and the one arm came. I was all bad. But he was like, that's what we do. And even though that was to the maximum of the military mentality, this is what I appreciate, because so many people, you know, they're like, oh, I'm having the worst day or the worst this. And I just
Right.
love watching that movie, We Were Soldiers. And I forget what the older guy, they're like, oh, great day. He's like, how do you know what kind of day it is? And it's like, we don't know. We're so blessed. We're so fortunate. We're so naive over, you know, to live in the United States, to what is actually going on, and, you know, what everyone like yourself was fighting for. And anyway, sorry not to get off subject, but just want to say thank you.
You don't have to apologize. You might as well be from Canada. You're worse than me.
Sorry, eh?
I love it. Sorry. Yeah, it's all good. Great. Now we're going to throw the accent in. I'm going to never live that down. Fantastic. Thanks, Travis. But yeah, no, I think that's fine. I think that's fine. I think there's not a lot of people open up about it that are of your, I want to say, your caliber or level or public figure. Not a lot of people talk about the military. They, you know, they acknowledge it. They'll say thank you for your service if they're in a situation, but they don't see it the way you see it. They haven't lived it having a father. They haven't lived it having an uncle. They haven't seen what it looks like when somebody struggles with PTSD. You haven't seen what the ultimate ramification or result of PTSD really can be, but you have. And so for someone like of your stature to be able to talk about it honestly and say, you know, like, we're blind, like a lot of civilian population, they really don't get it. They really don't understand it. And that's okay. And people want to live the way they want to live, and that's fine. But you are one of the rare ones that has a voice and that does talk about it and does use it to help other veterans, including myself. This was an opportunity I never thought I would ever get. And so the fact that you did it and were able to come on and talk to us, it's, you know, that means worlds to my listeners and to the veteran community, because people are going, okay, we're not, you know, even the biggest guy in action sports history, he cares, and he doesn't have to care. He doesn't have to acknowledge us. He doesn't have to. He can go live his life, do his jumps, be a badass, jump out of planes without parachutes, which just makes me sweat even just thinking about it. But you don't have to, and you do. And so that's why I want to ask you more about your dad and your family and your life, because you have had a unique experience. Besides all the other long lists of a unique experience, you've had a personal unique experience with our community in a different way. And so did you find it to be particularly difficult in any specific way that maybe civilians might not have had to deal with parents who haven't seen war?
My family treated injury and death a lot different than most families. I mean, my granddad was Golden Glove boxer. He was in the Navy. He actually was he was more of a brawler than anything, but he got in a fight and actually went off. Here, let me show you something real quick. I don't know if you stay with, but so they did a painting of it, but he fell off the USS Hawkins in World War II. It was funny. So he just did a painting as a joke, but he said, I went back for the ropes. This is just his story. I don't know, but he's like, I went back for the ropes and they weren't as high as a boxing ring. And I just went right over. He didn't hit me that hard. You know, I was just, you know, the ropes, they weren't as tall. So
the ropes,
so
it's the ropes.
The ropes. I'm like, they're the side of the ship. But anyway, so it was funny because he's got his shoes in that picture. And I said, Cal Pastrana, his name was Charles A. Pastrana. I said, what, you swam, because it took him about an hour, turn the boat around. The captain's like, I'm gonna go back for him. We're never gonna find him. But they found him, and they said he still had his shoes. He was treading water for an hour in the middle of the ocean with his shoes. And they said, well, why'd you have your shoes? He's like, well, because if you actually came back to get me, I was gonna need these.
You're gonna need my shoes.
Yeah. So that was funny,
brilliant.
but not funny. But so you got to figure, like, this is like the stories that they joke about, like, oh yeah, I fell off a ship in wartime and waited for an hour. You know, and my dad, he's like, oh, one of my best friends, you know, when he was over there, he's like, his gunny, because my dad, he's like, I was the greatest thing ever. He's like, I made the mistake of putting in when he went to Vietnam. He's like, I wanted to be on front lines, wanted to be a Marine, like, put me in there. And he made the mistake of writing that he could work heavy equipment and that he was construction.
Fantastic.
And they put him building roads. Now his gunny was shot, but he's like, we didn't see much fire, much action. We were just building roads, building bridges, putting up stuff, trying to get, convoy from one place to the other.
Right.
And he goes, it saved my life. He's like, and I appreciate every day that's where they put me. But still to see, to see what happens in war, to see that kind of stuff. And then to grow up where I'm like, my first bone I broke, I fell off the slide. My dad's like, don't be a sissy, like whatever, put that boot on, moto boot. And I went in like 2 weeks later and got checked out. And he's like, oh, it's broken. He's like, you're tougher than I thought you were, but still you're kind of a sissy, you whatever. And then the next time, so I broke the growth plate in my knee. And first time I tore my ACL, he was working on a jump with the Bobcat. And I was over a different part of the track. He saw me crash. He finished the jump before he came over. First thing he did was he checked out the bike. He's like, these are brand new handlebars. I'm like, Dad, I'm broken. He's like, all right, look, we rented the equipment for the day from a friend of ours. Like, I'm going to finish building your track and then we'll go to the hospital tomorrow if it still hurts. So like, that was just kind of I mean, it's that mentality. My, it just wasn't the same. Death was respected and appreciated, and definitely this family, even though we get not made fun of, we criticized maybe for taking too many chances, but we're the safest people around. And no one will really believe this, but we've seen so many things happen, and we'll at least give everyone the knowledge. Like the most dangerous thing my kids do is like jump on the trampoline with the super tramp with someone that's 200 pounds that doesn't know about double bounces and stuff. And they just get ejected off. Like, as long as everyone knows what the risks are, what their ability levels are. That's what my dad, from a young age, I was like, Dad, you think this bed sheet will work off the roof? He's like, no. I'm like, I bet it'll work. He's like, all right, try it. Learn. I told you. Yeah. Like, you sitting there, ow. It's like, yeah, what did you think was going to happen? Like, but learn yourself. And I feel like that's what, in this day and age, most of the parents shelter their kids to where they don't learn the hard way. And unfortunately, the older you get, the bigger mistakes you're going to make. So when you're learning how to ride a motorcycle at 16 and you're on the road and you get scared, now you have 1,000cc, or Hayabusa under you, as opposed to a 50cc little PW50, where your fall rate is a lot worse. The consequences get greater. So the more sheltering that we do, I believe the more difficult the decisions process is being made. My daughter, she's only hit one tree, but she hit it when she was 5 years old in a little 170, and came and she's crying. She's like, I'm never wearing a seatbelt again. It bruised me. I'm like, if that seatbelt wasn't there, you would have flown right out that window and smashed your head against the tree. It's like, okay. And now she tightens, she makes sure her seatbelts are super tight every time. So I'm like, if that was tighter, it wouldn't have hurt as much, but you didn't bother putting it on correctly. And then, so you have to have, unfortunately, a bad experience to learn from. And unfortunately, my kids have made a lot of them, but we try to keep them from making the ones that they're not going to be able to live with. So,
but I think you do it though. You do it the only reason I can agree with you and know that is I grew up in a family where my brother grew up racing, and then I grew up racing. And I remember the first time my dad was like, here's a 125. You're too small for it. Don't go out of second gear. And I was like, cool. I won't.
Yeah.
And he's like, there's 100 acres here and nothing in the middle except for one steel garbage can. Just don't go near it. And I was like, I won't.
Third gear pinned at the steel garbage can.
Right into it. Slid, put my fingers right through the gloves. And I just remember looking at him and he goes, I told you. But I find motocross families, BMX families, outdoor families, that a little more extreme sports, adrenaline type families, they are the more safer parent, I would argue, along the board, in terms of everything, and in terms of the way that they raise them, from what they do at school, how they handle situations, how they handle conflict, how they handle bullying. And then you look at the ones who do no physical activity and do no any other sport. They're more, there's some kids that don't like to be outdoors and do ride bikes and do those types of things. That's fine. It's not maybe for everybody, but there's a difference between that kid and then the kid that is doing a sport, who's BMXing on weekends, who's traveling with families. You see the different development, and you see them develop into, I arguably like to say, safer and better adults. And adults that make better and rational decisions, because like you said, they've made mistakes and they've learned from them early enough on. And that's why they all have missing teeth, dark teeth, a cap on one, like most of us, or they've got like crowns, or they've got like, hey, I've had this scar from here to here. And they end up having cooler stories at high school parties anyway. So I argue that it's just better.
No, well, yeah. And to go back one step from that, it's not like, oh yeah, just go out and like, every single time I get, my 7-year-old gets on, she's got 1,000cc Can-Am. And when she goes around, I always go watch a lap just to make sure she's listening, right, and she's doing, but I'm like, look, this is not a toy. You guys, we've had special foot pedals made so you can drive this. Like, we've had your seats special, everything's now, we've done everything to make that the most safe vehicle on the planet.
Right.
But she's still 7. She's still jumping jumps. There's still stuff that can go wrong. And every time she's like, I know, Dad, it's not a toy. And that's, for me, the biggest thing is just to understand, as long as you understand what the consequences are, mm-hmm, I believe you'll be better. So not to get off subject here, but I got 2 stories for you. Is that okay?
No, you're right. I love stories. Hit me with them.
All right. So we were at Woodward, grand opening. Addie was like, I don't know, she was 5 or 6. And she was jumping off of this one 3rd floor into the foam pit. And she's like, Dad, do you think I could front flip in there? I said, I don't know. Sure. She's like, Dad, that's a yes or no question. I'm like, I'm not, Addie, you're going to have to make your own judgment call. She looks and she looks, she jumps it 1 or 2 more times. And she goes, okay, Dad, it's going to be close. Can I get a spot? I was like, yeah, I'll be down there. So I walked down, and sure enough, her head was about this much too short. And I gave her a little push in, and she didn't front flip it anymore, but she did it that one time. And it was interesting.
On her part.
But it was interesting, just her, and I would have been there anyway to make sure she made it. But it was just, she went through the process. And for me, that was one of the proudest dad moments. Did it matter? No. Should she have done it? Probably not. But like, she could jump off there and I could pretty much catch her at that age and whatever. So, and there was pads on the floor too before the foam pit. But the greatest moment that I had as kind of a parent moment, and it wasn't even my kid, was filming for Jim Connor. This kid, Connor Stitt, 9 years old, wanted to do a double backflip. So he comes down, and Hubert, the guy that you met earlier in the show, the guy that runs everything around here, he had made the jump, but it had a little turn to it. It wasn't quite straight. The landing had to make it a little bit, like they call it the Pastrana land chicane. Nothing that we build here is perfect. We just don't have the room when there's trees and there's stuff in the way. So this kid's 9 years old. He's going to come down this huge roll in on this little tiny, like, 16-inch wheel bike. It gives swaps. Like, I'm scared to death for him. And the first time he does a double backflip onto the airbag, he's like, oh yeah, no problem. I had that. I'm like, my heart's in my chest. I'm like, okay. So we put the landing down, and it's got a little bit of a cushion, but it's still like, it's a real landing. You can, like, Beaver Fleming rode out on a skateboard. So like, you got to hit it pretty good. We got a couple of good guys on BMX here. Brennan Schmidt, and everyone's looking and like, oh, this jump's kind of gnarly. And I don't know if we can make that turn and hit the next jump. And I'm running my Can-Am underneath. So he's got to do his double flip, land a trick that he's never done, make a 45-degree right while he's going down the landing, assuming that he makes it right, hits a metal ramp and jumps 20 feet over the ground, over a motorized vehicle that's coming through at 50 miles an hour. And if he goes straight, basically he runs straight into me. So he has to make the turn and hit the jump. It was okay, but like, kind of looking, I'm like, I don't know. And Connor, 9 years old, goes, all right, worst case scenario, if I don't feel like I'm landing perfect, I'll jump off and I'll slide to a stop before I get to you. No problem at all. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. I know I can land this. So he does it one time without me. He says, I don't know how many more double flips I want to do, but just go under me this time. He goes, and he's running brakeless, by the way. So he's got no brakes on his bicycle,
okay.
which I'm like, I don't understand the whole new generation, but great. And he's like, nope. He's got like 5 different plans for depending on what happens and how he's going to miss. And he sticks it perfect. Double backflip, and he throws in a backflip going over me that Brandon Schmidt, who's like X Games BMXer, wouldn't even hit just to jump. And he sticks it all first, like one take, one and done. And I'm like, man, and I just talked to this kid and we rationalized it, and his parents were like, oh, what the heck? But I rationalized with this 9-year-old like I would rationalize, like honestly, better with him than I've had conversations with Hollywood stunt coordinators, 100%. And just to see that understanding and that what he can do. And that's what his parents were always like, well, what if a coach says he shouldn't do something? I'm like, honestly, Connor, I think if he tells you he can, or he tells you he can't, I'm like, I wouldn't argue with him. Don't ever push that kid into doing something that he says he can't do, because I believe he's got an innate understanding of what he can and can't do. That's probably beyond, he feels something that the coaches probably aren't going to feel. And if he says he can, just because the best rider in the world that's an Olympic gold medalist hasn't done that, probably doesn't mean that your 9-year-old can't. I mean, honestly, that's, you know, it's that
probably
weird.
Your 9-year-old can't. Don't argue with your 9-year-old. That's a
yeah. I mean, I'm not saying don't argue with your 9-year-old. Obviously, there's 90%. And then, you know, 10 minutes later, I'm like, hey, don't drink a Red Bull out of the fridge. I see him with a Red Bull. I'm like, hey, kid, no.
You're 9.
Yeah.
Slap it out of his hand. Oh my God. But that's so funny to me, because that's an argument for exactly what I'm trying to say is these kids that are in these types of sports are brought up, and it's not like they're forced to grow up too quick. They're just in situations that normal children, if they weren't exposed to bikes or that decision making or that rationale, they wouldn't be able to develop that skill so early on in their life. Like you said, if a world, you know, gold medalist, Olympic medalist it doesn't mean that's not possible. It doesn't mean that it's not something this kid can do. It's just, you have to be able to trust in that child that they've learned enough from being in that sport. Because I'm assuming if he's 9 and he's doing what he's doing, he's been doing it as long as he could walk, or before he could walk, he's been on a bike. So most of those kids that have been on bikes, I noticed from like 3-4 years old that start racing, their brain development is completely different. Their rationale and what they see, how they feel, and they are smart little individuals because they've been forced to think completely differently than maybe a child who has never been exposed to things like that or that type of atmosphere. And that to me is a fantastic thing to see kids growing up with our generation. Brakeless, that's a different conversation.
I would be against that, but hey, I'm not his parent, but at the end of the day, well, that's so the little girl Kier Serlin, who's here, she dropped in. Like, I'm not good enough to drop into any skate park without brakes, especially when there's other people coming and understanding where you're gonna. She just drops in, no hesitation, 360s out. She's 11. I'm like, what is going on?
You can't compete with this generation coming up. I feel like we're going to be in the wheelchairs soon, and these kids are going to be just hucking things and doing things like, I mean, you've progressed the sport so much, so arguably that's kind of your fault. So I'd like to just put that on you. I mean, if you decided to just stick to like one backflip like a normal human being did back in like the late 1990s, we would have all been fine. But then you decided to up it and realize.
No, Carey Hart did the first flip. That opened Pandora's box. We'll blame Carey.
He did. Well, I guess we can, but I haven't interviewed him, so I can't personally blame him to his face yet. I'll get there. But I will blame him then for that. But until that space is filled, I'm going to blame you, because I mean, my brother wouldn't be doing the ridiculous shit he was doing if it wasn't for you. So it's your fault. It's just everything. We're going to blame Travis for the sport injury fault of all of our children. But I mean, jumping out of the plane without a parachute, that felt like a smart decision.
Well, I mean, if Johnny Utah could do it, it couldn't be that hard, really. Point Break. No, you didn't get the Point Break reference. That's okay.
I got it. You're not wrong.
Utah, give me 2. No, nothing.
No,
anyway.
I can't, because I'm Canadian and it hurts me.
All right. Well, Keanu Reeves, there was a movie back in the day. Don't worry about it. But he jumped out the plane without a parachute, caught someone else on the way down. Obviously, that was a stunt. They really had a parachute on. But since then, a couple of the Red Bull athletes have jumped out. and actually without a parachute, and landed in a net, which was way
that.
crazier than what I did. But at the end of the day, my job is to figure out stuff that excites me, that challenges me, and that people can either relate to or not relate to, but they want to watch it. They go to Nitro Circus to believe the impossible is possible. They go to the Nitro Circus to see a guy with spinal bifida that everyone said would never be able to do anything in action sport or sport in general, wow the audience and himself and the riders, and inspire every single person there that no matter what your injury is. And how many kids that have had spinal bifida or that got hurt or that were born with whatever, that were in a wheelchair, have now been able to go to skate park. And he started wheelchair motocross, and they go around the world. And there's so many kids that just, they had, not to say no hope, but to be in that
less hope
category. You know what I mean? Like they like, oh man, I love skating. I love BMX. I could never do this. Well, Aaron Fotheringham was like, yes, I can. And yes, I will. And he has done so much and broken so many barriers down for what's possible. And when you go to Nitro Circus and you see stuff that you think is 100% not possible, and someone does it, they land it for the first time, even if it's a 360 on a land boogie board, you know, when someone does something that it inspires. Like I had a mom that wants to tell me, she's like, I didn't want my kids to get into action sports. I don't know where he picked up a skateboard. I was trying to talk him out of it. I didn't want him with these hoodlums and derelicts. And she goes, I found myself halfway through the Nitro Circus show that I did not want to come to. And I'm standing cheering because every single one of the cast, if you will, us, we're all out. We stopped the show completely to go hug Dusty Weigel because he landed on this. We put wheels on a boogie board, and we're like, you're not going to be able to make it. You're going to fly off. You can't steer it. He's on his belly, and he's hopping the thing right, left, he goes off the ramp, throws it in a 360, throws it under his feet. He's got flippers and a Speedo on and a helmet. But if he misses, all the skin gets taken off by the resi. And he's crashed every single show and refused to do it with any more padding. He has no skin down either one of his legs. His back is just raw. And you're like, dude, please just put some pads on. Nope, I'm going to land it. And he lands that. We stop the show. Everyone goes and we cheer him. The crowd's going nuts. They don't know why. They just saw something just ridiculous that they didn't expect to see. And we're so pumped for him. We're raising him on our shoulders. And we started the wave and he's crowd surfing. His mom's like, I was jumping up and down clapping. And she goes, started thinking about it. She's like, why am I clapping? But just that passion is what I believe Nitro, if we do anything other than just entertain ourselves, that's what we bring. And hopefully it inspires people to say, you know what? Doesn't matter how tall or small or heavy or light or what color or what race or what language, if I am passionate about riding a bicycle or a motorcycle or a skateboard or a scooter, don't care. If you're good at what you do, we had a guy on that was a pogo stick guy, Pogo Fred, one of the coolest guys I've ever met in my life. And he was awesome and he loved what he did. And it's just this traveling tour of passionate individuals. We couldn't be more different, but it's when you get that together, that when you say mental health, and I was never in the military, but I can only imagine that when you got a Nitro to the lowest scale of this, but when you got a guy that's in front of you on a bicycle and a guy that's behind you on a snowmobile and to the right on a quad and to the left on a scooter, and there's a wheelchair that's two ahead of you, and you're all hitting the same jumps, doing tricks. And if any one of you messes up, everyone's just going to land on everyone else. And it's just you're going to have a really bad day. And that camaraderie, that teamwork, and just say that, hey, can you do this? And when they say, yes, I can do my job, that you trust them and you don't think about it anymore and you do your job. And at the end of it, it works out. And I can't even imagine to that level in the military and what you guys had to do and the trust and the teamwork and the camaraderie. But for us, the mental health isn't when we're on tour. It's when you get hurt. It's not only the injury, but when you get hurt, you go home and all of a sudden you don't have that group of brothers and sisters in arms, if you will, that is there for you. And that, even if you're in hell and it's the worst situation possible, you're in hell with your friends. And what Marcus Luttrell told me, he goes, when you're in hell with your friends, it's not hell. It's where you want to be. Yeah. And I just thought that was really cool. And having a chance to get to meet Marcus, who was Lone Survivor in the movie that Mark Wahlberg ended up playing him, to sit down with him. And every time I thought about telling a story and he told one, I was like, wow, my stories suck. I'd never been so quiet in my life.
No, your stories don't suck. It's that's the difference I think you kind of forget, is when you're around people like that, your stories don't suck. And the reason why is because you because you do what you do, you give people like us that when we finally do come out and we finally do have that separation from our brothers and sisters, you bring the lightness and the entertainment to us. And that's what keeps people moving. You make people smile, you make people happy. So your stories don't suck, not even come close to. Everybody's story has a value.
Well, I mean, they're not on the same level as your stories.
That's okay.
That's all I'm saying.
You know what? I never want, you know what I always say to that though, and people say that to me, I never want you to have lived my stories. I'll be glad to live them for you, and hope that you never have to experience them. And I just hope that people keep doing things that they love and that they feel passionate about, and that includes you. And you bring that value, Travis. And I know you got to go, so I'll pretty much end it there. But I do want to tell you one thing, like truly from just regular society to those who have had head trauma, to those who have had physical injury and don't think it's possible to do the sports they want to keep doing or live the life they want to keep living. You guys make that look easy, and you guys make that look accessible, and you make that look like it is. You make it look like we can keep living our lives the way we want to live our lives, because there's other people that are so much gnarlier than us that show us that we can just be ourselves and be accepted in a group. You've brought this, I call them your group of misfits, because I think they're so unique in the best way possible. And you've taken that, you've traveled the world, you've exposed the world to that. And I'm grateful for you, for you, just from like society. I'm grateful that I've gotten this chance to chat with you, and you've been as open and honest as you have been for my listeners, because I know they're going to freak the fuck out when they find out you're coming on. And I know that you are going to continue to do what you guys do at Nitro. The only thing I will give you shit for is there's no stop in Vancouver on this tour, mister.
I'm sorry. That's not my department.
I went to the show in Vancouver with my husband. He owns Atlas Neck Brace and Matrix, and we went out and we watched you guys with our team of people. And I'll tell you, it's a show that should never be missed. Every human being of every age needs to witness it, not only because of the cool tricks you do and the entertainment you provide, but the passion, the drive, and you bring belief to people that you can do anything. And that, to me, God, Travis, if you just do one thing in your life, you've done everybody a huge service. So thank you so much from our listeners at Brass and Unity, and just thanks for spending your hour with us. We appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. Thanks for all you've done, and appreciate letting me come on the show.
Thanks, Travis. We'll chat with you later.
See ya.